This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and hey, we're back after about 10 days of a mini vacation that my co-host had last week. So hey, it's nice to be back, and we have a big show tonight, Shane.
Yeah, I had got fun few days in Portland where I was born. Didn't live there for long, but beautiful city. My wife was her first time there, and so good to get out and went to Powell's Books and OMSI and all the cool stuff. Most of the cool stuff you got to go to if you go to Portland. But good to be back. We had a great chat with our guests. I'm sure we're going to plug here in a minute, and a lot of various topics to get to. It's the off season for a lot of the key sports, but there's never a dull moment.
Yeah, we're going to break it down with Arizona football offensive coordinator Seth Doege, who Shane and I had a chance to catch up with on Friday afternoon a couple days ago. We're recording this on Sunday night. So it'll be you gotta check out what the conversation we had with Seth in segment number 2. It was actually really good, and he's a very engaging guy and some good questions, and we covered a lot of the personnel offensively. So I think some of his answers might surprise some of you as they did me. So
there's 3 stages of really aging when it comes to sports. Number 1 is being younger than most of the players.
Yeah.
Number 2 is being older than all of the players, and number 3 is being older than a lot of the coaches. And Seth Doege is in his mid-30s. We are both. Let's just say we're both older than him. So that's what it's come to. A lot of head coaches, including the guy up north, is younger as well. But it's just the reality we live in, Eric.
I'll tell you what, though, Shane. Seth was an impressive guy. He's a guy, and I didn't want to say this on the interview. I just don't think he's going to be around at Arizona much longer unless he'll get a head coaching job somewhere.
But you know what? I'd rather have those good problems than the ones we had last year.
Yeah, but here's the thing about that. I would rather have Seth Doege as if he is legit as an offensive coordinator. And let's say the Wildcats offense puts up, really good numbers this season. I'd probably rather have Seth Doege as the head football coach.
Let's cross that bridge.
Right. I mean, you can't say that now. I'm just saying in a hypothetical world, a guy that's in his mid-30s who's trying to prove something, Jed Fish was older, but he was trying to prove something. And you saw what happened for Arizona, that after in year 3, they peaked. I would like to see a step forward from Brent Brennan, and you get to a bowl game and I'll shut up.
Of course.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right, let's get to buy or sell. And number 1, Shane, the kind of one of the news bits of news that was broken while we were off was Tommy Lloyd scheduling the defending national champions Florida to open the season in Las Vegas. So while these games are fun, Shane, they really don't benefit Arizona in the long run. Buy or sell?
All right. How many times do we have to have this discussion? Let's just start over. Let's just pretend that you and I haven't discussed this at least a dozen times, and I'll make my case and you make yours, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So your premise, I look at it completely the other way around. There's no way this game hurts Arizona in the long run, unless Florida completely tanks next season. I say scheduling these kinds of games, they're beneficial for 2 reasons, okay? 1, you get top-level, tournament-level competition throughout the season. You get it in non-conference, and you get it in the Big 12, that was not the case in the Pac-12, but it certainly is in the Big 12, as we saw last season. There were very few games that Arizona was able to take off, and I think that was a good thing. Number 2, the selection committee can be unpredictable, as we saw when West Virginia didn't get in last time, but one thing they've been pretty consistent about, as long as I can remember, is rewarding teams for playing tough schedules. Or at the very least, not penalizing them for losing those games. You remember when everyone outside of Tucson was upset when Arizona was the last team in back in 2009, Russ Pendle's year? The reason the committee put them in? Because they had 6 RPI top 50 wins way back when we were doing RPI instead of net. They had 6 of them, which was more than twice as many as any other team on the bubble that people were complaining should have been in. Okay, so for both of those reasons, I would suggest that a loss to a national championship contender, or at least a team that's capable of making a deep run in March, including Florida, is more beneficial than beating a quad 3 or 4 opponent by 40 points at home. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to win that game, that's huge come Selection Sunday. There's my take. Go ahead.
All right. I'm not big on, or I'm going to disagree with you. And I'm going to buy this. I don't think it really benefits. When you're coming to Selection Sunday, do we really care who Arizona played the first game of the year? No. Do we really care? It's a what have you done for me? Like, do we really think about
When you say we, I'm sorry, when you say we, are you talking about us, the fans, or are you talking about the selection committee? Because I guarantee the latter, it absolutely does matter.
I don't think November results mean a hell of a lot. I think it's what have you done for me lately? I think you look at Arizona, Shane, they got a 4 seed, and they did absolutely nothing in the non-conference last year. They didn't beat anybody.
Right. But they got a 4 seed in part because they played those games. If they had lost to cupcakes or beaten some crappy teams, they probably wouldn't have even gotten a 4 seed.
Disagree. It was all about the conference season. And I think now that Arizona you only remember, like, think about it. When it comes to Arizona basketball to end the season, I think about January, February, March. I didn't think about December other than me being a moron and saying this team isn't going to make the tournament. So that's the reason they're cool. These games are cool, but I think now that Arizona's in a legitimate conference with teams that are going to be beasts as expected to be really good, I don't think the non-conference matters. I really don't.
I will try to find some common ground with you, and I will agree that it doesn't matter come Selection Sunday in terms of the way you're playing right then and there. I would rather play tougher competition later in the season than earlier, but I'd rather have both than just one of the two. And going back to 2009, if Arizona had beaten some, mid-major teams that went below 500 instead of beating Kansas on technically a neutral court in Phoenix and beating Gonzaga that year and having some other good conference wins along with those, they wouldn't have been in the tournament to begin with because most people thought they weren't going to be in anyway because of their record. The committee rewarded them for not just playing but beating good teams. And so I think that's how you learn to win. And I think this Arizona team was more prepared for March than any of the others, even though they still got stopped at the Sweet 16. They happened to run into Duke in the Sweet 16. We talked about this after the season ended. If they had the same schedule, if they had Clemson and then Alabama, with this team, that battle-tested team that they had this past season, they might have broken through. At least they would have beaten Clemson. You could do the hypothetical game all day, but I think this last Arizona team was battle tested. And I think you saw that by the way they battled back against Oregon, which they wouldn't have a year ago. And they battled back against Duke. Duke was just better, and that's fine. You tip your hat to them. But I think we already saw some payoff in playing tough competition. And I agree that the Big 12 played toughen them up more than anything, and that was more relevant. But I think in terms of seeding, I don't think Arizona would have gotten as high as a 4 seed had they not played some top competition in non-conference, and I think that's where we disagree.
Okay, fair. We'll move on from there. I just don't think, and don't get me wrong, these games are cool, and they give us a lot to talk about on the show, and we're all going to go to watch them. I just don't think it's necessary, and I think what will be an interesting gauge for me is when we see the other top teams, and Gonzaga is always one that throws out a tough schedule because their regular season schedule is garbage. But let's look at the Big 12 top contenders next year. Kansas, BYU, Houston, just to start, and maybe Iowa State to start.
I would say Texas Tech as well.
Texas Tech. So let's compare their non-conference schedules to Arizona as they get announced in the fall, and let's see if they agree with me or you, where you probably, for me, I would want to schedule 3 tough games in non-conference. Arizona has at least 5, and probably that will grow.
You would rather feast on cupcakes as long as you can until the stiff competition.
Yeah, because I'd rather get some of these other young guys, involved. You're throwing them right into the fire against Florida. Okay, fine. Maybe Florida's going to have a down year. They're losing some players. Fine. But then you have, Alabama at UConn, I think is the following week. Does that really...
Is it possible you have some PTSD from the last non-conference schedule? Is that some part of the issue here?
No, I think my PTSD, honestly, Shane, is from watching Duke and Wisconsin back-to-back last year.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, 2 years ago, the non-conference schedule, in hindsight, it made sense because the Pac-12 was garbage.
You just don't think it's as necessary now.
I don't think it's necessary. I
I'm
don't.
fine with it.
I can't draw the conclusion that Arizona was better in the Big 12 because they lost to Duke and was non-competitive at home against Duke.
I just think iron sharpens iron. I don't think there's
Oh,
no
that's fair.
downside to it,
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I'm sure more people will agree with you than me, and
as
of
they should.
course, always. And I know that we'll all be excited to watch games. So okay.
Yep.
Number two, Keona Pete, brother of Koa, transferred from ASU to Arizona. Is there anything to buy about this move other than making his brother happy, Shane?
I'm gonna let you take this one first because I know you've been so anti-transferring within the conference and especially from one rival to the other. Give me your take and then I'll give you mine.
I think it's nice for Koa. I don't know if Keona Pete is good enough to play on Arizona's offensive line, which already looks like it's a weakness on this year's team. If preseason reports are true, I mean, we talked to Barrett Baker about that as well, that probably not a strong unit. But I think transferring as a player from one rival to the other is absolute and utter garbage, and should be. And I know we've seen it go both ways. We
Mm-hmm.
had the basketball women's basketball player the other year. We
Mm-hmm.
had Kangaika go from
Jacob
Arizona to
Mangata.
ASU in football, and now we
Haven't
have
played
this.
much.
I don't like it. I don't like it, and I think that the NCAA, as part of their rules, should put in a bylaw that says each school has the right to block three schools for which to transfer to in for every sport.
Be an interesting question for future guests. Maybe you should ask that.
Okay. Yeah.
Look, and like you said, I wasn't thrilled when Jacob Kanagaika did it the other way around. Although he hasn't seen much action at either school, so take that for what it's worth. I kind of have a hard time, just aside from your take, and I'm not going to dispute it. I don't. I get both sides of that argument. Unlike the previous topic in which you're just flat out wrong, this one
Fair.
I kind of see your perspective. I have a hard time believing that Keona he made this move just to make his brother happy. I mean, this is his college football career we're talking about. Now, is it a coincidence that he ended up at Arizona too? I'm sure it's not, but I have to imagine there's more to it for him than that. My guess is he opened himself to the possibility once Koa committed, cracked the door open, listened to Arizona, met with the coaching staff. Brent Brennan's great with relationships. He liked what he heard. So, if you want to be conspiratorial, you could say maybe Koa had some sort of verbal agreement about bringing his brother to Tucson. I don't think so. I'm just throwing that out there. But as far as like big picture, going from one rival to the next, I mean, it's the nature of the transfer portal. I do think there's should be some more restrictions. I think maybe in a future episode we'll talk about Fran Fraschillo, his proposal about limiting transfers. I think it's a good one. But yeah, I agree. There's something kind of that feels kind of icky about this sort of thing. It's kind of like when a free agent goes from like the Yankees to the Red Sox and baseball and stuff like that. But that's been going on in pro sports for a long time. I think a lot of, we don't want to turn college sports into pro sports. But I don't have as big a problem with it as you do. But I also, especially knowing the rivalry as I do, I agree. It's kind of weird, a little unsettling, and yeah, I don't think it should be banned necessarily, but I'm not a big fan of it.
I think that schools should have the chance to block players from transferring,
So
elsewhere.
they each get to pick three teams.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Three
Yeah.
schools
So like Ohio State picks Michigan, Penn State, and you know
Oregon.
Nebraska or Oregon,
Oregon.
right,
Yeah.
right, or Oregon. Arizona would probably who would if that rule were to come into effect in football, what three schools would you outside or what two schools outside of ASU would you block?
Outside of ASU. Well, the game's changed now. I don't know. I might pick a couple of Texas schools. I mean, Texas Tech, since they're loaded with NIL money, maybe. Beyond that, I don't know. I just we've talked about Arizona doesn't have a lot of natural rivals. They just don't. That's why Arizona ASU is such a big one because they're the only two real natural rivals. So I don't know. I have to think about it some more. Maybe make it a blanket rule you can't transfer within your own conference. I don't know. I don't. Again, I don't think this is as a necessity. But I'm interested as we get closer to football season, bring it up with guests we have on who are in the know and see what they think about it because it's an interesting discussion.
That's fair. Number three, baseball's in a funk, Shane. Buy or sell? It looks like they peaked too early.
Yeah, they followed up a series win against TCU, one of the best teams in the conference, with a series loss, and they almost got swept at home against the worst team in the
Yeah.
conference, Utah. That they had to scratch and claw just to salvage a win in the series on Sunday, as we're a few hours since we were after we're recording this, or before we're recording this. The most concerning thing is that for me from this past series is Owen Kramkowski, who's been their star pitcher for the last month plus, and he just got switched to starting Friday instead of Saturday. He gave up 5 runs on 7 hits in 4 innings against Utah on Friday. They're already kind of struggling and been kind of mediocre against Big 12 opponents, and not a lot of great teams, but at least he was great, and now he's fallen off a bit too. I guess the glass half full way to look at it is Arizona was on a roll heading into regionals last year, and then they laid a complete egg in regionals. They were swept out as a host team. So how much does the momentum really mean? I'm not sure. But yeah, since the ASU series, and I was up at one of those games in Tempe where Arizona came back and won, uh, UV's been pretty average. They're just 8-7, I believe, in their last 15 conference games. And that includes a lot of games against the bottom half of the Big 12. Then, of course, they lost to GCU earlier this past week, which seems like a recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
If Brendan Summerhill can stay healthy, he went 5 for 11 in the series against Utah. Then you never know. Arizona's capable of scoring double-digit runs on any given day. But at this point, a host seed certainly seems highly unlikely, and they're
Oh,
looking at
gone.
they're
Gone.
yeah, and they're likely looking at a 5th or 6th place finish in the Big 12. So definitely not in the right direction, which is the opposite of how they finished last year.
Yeah, and I think this team is probably going to, they'll make the big dance or whatever you call it in baseball, and then they're
They will,
probably going to flame out in the first round
maybe
again. I mean, so anything above that, listen, if they were to make it to super regionals, I will once again be wrong. But
step in the right direction.
yeah, a step in the right. I'm not encouraged with the way they're going. Now, a team that I am kind of encouraged with the way they're going as a softball team, they finished second in the Big 12 tournament chain and got
Yeah.
the number 13 overall seed in the tournament. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I took a quick look because this was announced a couple hours before we started recording. But in terms of a buy or sell, I'll buy that they should make it to super regionals again. I don't. It's not going to be easy. The margin between Arizona and Ole Miss is pretty slim. Arizona hasn't played its best recently. I know they made it to the Big 12 tournament with championship game, which is what you alluded to,
Hmm.
but they had to rally twice against inferior competition before they were shut out by Texas Tech in the championship game. So, and then there's this because you look at Arizona and Ole Miss, Grand Canyon has the best ERA in the country at
But against who?
1.74. I know. You have to consider the level of competition, but they have two of the best pitchers in the country. I guess Megan Golden for Lopes, she has an ERA of 0.92. So yeah, you have to consider that. Arizona's not too far behind at 2.47. Ole Miss is just under 3 as a team in ERA in the SEC. But Arizona did have kind of a tough time against GCU in their only matchup this season. U of A won 7-3, but it took extra innings. And pitching wins, especially this time of year. So, all that to say, I think the days of Arizona breezing through regionals is over. It has been for a few years now. I think the home field edge will definitely help. I think that's a big deal in softball. I think I saw that Ole Miss is like 7-10 in road games this year, even though I think it's technically considered a neutral site, but obviously it's a home game for U of A. So I'll pick Arizona to advance. I think they'll find a way. I don't think it's going to be easy though.
I would agree. I think they will find a way as well. And I just want to give one other little tidbit. The team that Arizona would play in super regionals is Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Arizona, in 2 Caitlin Lowe appearances, Arizona has defeated Arkansas, I believe, twice, 2021, 2024 in the tournament.
Yeah,
So
good
that
step.
of all the teams that they are matched up to play, I think a trip to Oklahoma is now. I don't know much about Arkansas softball this year. I can't really tell you they're the number 4 team overall, but
Yeah,
some teams just have other teams' number,
could
and
be.
I that is a of all things. I'd rather they match up with them against rather than Oklahoma or Texas, for example.
No, for sure. Yeah, and Arkansas, I think the talent gap is a little bit bigger, but sure, yeah. And Arizona's done it before, and they can do it again. But I just think that for any sort of casual fan that's looking at regionals and like, oh yeah, Arizona should advance. Yeah, they should, but it will not be easy. And I'm glad that Ole Miss and GCU have to play each other in that first game, and Arizona hopefully takes care of business and then goes into the winners bracket for whoever they face after that.
I think they'll take care of business, but we'll be back probably next weekend to analyze how it looks. As always, Wildcat Country is sponsored by Harrah's Auction Casino. And why wait for rewards? Wildcat fans at Harrah's Auction Casino, your play today means free play tomorrow. Sign up for Caesar's Rewards, play your favorite slots, unlock up to $25 a day, and next day free slot play. Plus, your rewards go beyond the casino. Enjoy dining, entertainment, hotel stays, and more at 50-plus destinations nationwide. Bear down, play today, and get rewarded tomorrow only at Harrah's Auction Casino. Must be 21 or older to gamble. Know when to stop before you start. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 or 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Visit the Caesars Rewards Center for details. Easy for me to say. Coming up next, Seth Doege sat down with us on Friday. You're going to want to hear this interview here on Wildcat Country. Shane, I'm doing my Sportsline betting show, last year college football betting show, and I look at, I'm like, who's the best against the spread team in the country? Of course, it was the Marshall Thundering Herd. And I look, I'm like, who's running the offense over there? It's Seth Doege. And I remember him from Texas Tech, put up all those record-setting numbers under Mike Leach. Next thing you know, he's Arizona's offensive coordinator 6 weeks later. Funny how the world kind of works like that. And now he joins us here on Wildcat Country. Coach, glad to have you. And I got to start with, you're a Mike Leach protege. One of the great offensive minds in the history of football. Do you have a Mike Leach story? Or something that he taught you, you being his quarterback for several years?
I have plenty of stories. Some of them aren't, obviously some you can't say on air, and then some you can. He was incredible for me. Obviously a guy that I signed up to play for, one of the better coaches I've ever had a chance to be around. And then I will tell you this story. Most people don't know this, but I didn't play my junior or senior year of high school football. I ended up getting a scholarship going into my junior year. I committed, but it says a lot about Mike Leach to stick with me and believe in me enough and really give me an opportunity to live out my dream and really change my life. Because to be honest with you, if I don't play college football at Texas Tech, then most likely I'm not sitting here talking to you. So I'll forever be grateful to Mike Leach for that. But I'll give you a funny story that he did. So we and this was legal back in the day, but we had this drill called Bull in the Ring to start practice. And, you lined up about 3 yards from each other and you went head to head and you tried not to twist, but it was a fight, and the most physical player usually won. Well, when he would get mad at a DB or a receiver, he would put me in Bull in the Ring as a quarterback, and he called me his prize fighter because you got to know my background. My dad was a defensive coach. I grew up playing middle linebacker, so I wasn't afraid to be physical. But of course, those DBs and receivers didn't want to be embarrassed by, the blue jersey, which was a non-contact jersey, and getting beaten Bull in the Ring. So anytime he was mad at somebody, he called up the prize fighter and made me go to war. Now I'm surprised that I didn't have like 8 concussions from it, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going to go as fast as I could, as hard as I could, and try to win. But after a while, those guys, they started taking notice of how hard I'd go, and it was really hard to win, just because, obviously, like I said, nobody wanted to be embarrassed by a quarterback.
Bull in the Ring sounds like the most Mike Leach South/Texas football story I've ever heard. That sounds right on brand for him.
Every day.
I was going to end with this question. I'm going to start with it since you already mentioned your dad. You did an interview when you were hired at Arizona about how your dad, who's you mentioned a longtime coach as well. And I guess you were the ball boy or water boy or both at the time. He'd sometimes have you throw a football, maybe accidentally on purpose, at an official who was making him mad. Have you ever been tempted or had like a player or water boy of your own do anything similar? Is any of that maybe kind of rubbed off on you as a coach?
No, obviously, there's too much going on for me to talk and and have something go on like that. But yeah. I will say this: I do teach teach our ball boys to not give the ball to the referee. We have tempo mechanics that want our receivers or our skill position anytime they have the ball on the sidelines, not to give it to the sideline official to run it back to the middle. And so our ball boys are taught to almost be coaches from that extent, where they are telling the receiver that went out of bounds or the running back that went out of bounds to run the ball back to the middle, right? So they're almost coaches on the sideline now.
Okay. And is that something you picked up from your dad, or is that your own kind of
No, that's a Lane Kiffin, Jeff Levy,
Okay.
Charlie Weiss thing. Like when I was at Ole Miss, uh, there was two teams playing really really fast, and that was Ole Miss and Tennessee. And so all kind of stemmed from the Baylor tree, and they kind of Levy kind of took it on at Ole Miss, and they kind of adapted it the year that I was there. But it allowed you to play a little bit with a little bit more tempo, get the ball down a little bit quicker.
Makes sense. All right, let me focus on this season now. Brent Brennan and his staff did an incredible job retaining so many top players from the previous regime, including Noah Fifita. But for any number of reasons, that just didn't translate to the kind of success on the field that they wanted, and certainly the fans wanted. From your perspective, not being part of the coaching staff last year, but going through spring practice, getting to know the guys on offense, including the new guys, what have you learned about why this team and maybe specifically Noah Fifita just weren't able to put it all together last season, and how to maybe rectify that going forward?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Obviously, if you weren't here to know the ins and outs, like you hear stories. But ultimately, I think that there wasn't just a complete buy-in from all the players, and then I think from Coach Brennan's staff and himself will tell you this, that they just felt like they were having to recruit the entire time, and they could never really put their stamp on or really coach the guys that wanted the way they should be coached and demand the way they should be demanded, just because they're afraid of losing everybody, right? So they're trying to keep this 10-win team together with the talent that they had. Well, really, it was just a complete recruiting season and trying to recruit and make everybody feel good and all that kind of stuff. Well, you didn't have a chance to really build a team. And so in my opinion, there was no identity, especially on offense. And I felt, Noah, if he were to talk to you, he'd probably say the same thing. He just didn't feel like there was really an identity on offense and where they could go with it. Really from a coach standpoint, did they really have an idea of what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do things? I think they were trying to figure out their players as well. And so with that combination, obviously doesn't always translate to or transition to success, in which I think what we've done a good job of this spring is creating that identity, creating a mentality, creating a culture on offense, coaching these guys hard, but loving them the same way, and creating real relationships with them, not necessarily begging them to stay. I think we got a lot of kids here that just want to be here. They want to be Arizona Wildcats. And so I think that's what's going to give us an edge.
Coach, I was really impressed last year, as I mentioned, what you did with Marshall and how you turned Braylon Braxton kind of into a dual threat, 19 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, and he was also running the ball fairly often. Are we going to see that from Noah Fifita, or would you prefer, considering, maybe he's not as tall as Braylon Braxton, he's more of a pocket passer and throw it all over the lot? What's kind of your philosophy with Noah in that regard?
Braylon was a special athlete. Now, Braylon was 6'2", 230. So you really weren't scared to run him. And honestly, Braylon could play linebacker and still be a very, very successful football player. That's just the way Braylon was built. And so really I changed kind of what we did and how we did things a little bit more to fit his style of play. And so, I ran him a little bit more. I do think Noah has the ability to run, but I don't think he has that running back body and makeup to where he can just take a pounding like Braylon could. Like I said, I viewed Braylon like a running back almost that could throw. And so you could run him in between the tackles and not be nervous, like if he took a shot that he wasn't going to get back up or didn't have the armor to protect himself, where Noah's obviously the stature is what it is, but he's special when it comes to getting the ball out of his hands, right? Where Braylon was kind of special with his feet, I think Noah's special with his arm and his mind. So I think it'll be more of, your typical, quick game, drop back kind of stuff but I do think Noah, what people don't really realize is how special he does, or how special he is on the move outside of the pocket when he can create. Like I think about the Utah game where he threw it to Kean to really ice the game. That type those type of throws he's really special at. So there is times where I feel like moving the pocket is an advantage for us, and getting him almost, instead of him having to create and scramble, is manipulating and having that into the system where we can create that for him to get outside the pocket and still be, special with those throws. And so I'm not afraid to run him at all, because I know he's got a Warriors mentality and he's tough as, anybody in the country, but also don't want to get him hurt either. So I think it's got to be strategic on how you do those things.
And that makes a ton of sense. Now, Arizona fans are used to Rich Rodriguez when he ran kind of a spread offense. I don't want to call it the air raid, but it was more spread, a lot of running concepts. You're bringing in the air raid. Can you explain to just our audience, what is the air raid as Seth Doege designs it?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I talked to Graham and I. So Graham Harrell's a guy that I've worked with, and really the system really started with him and what he designed. And I've kind of taken my own approach to it, put my own flavor on it. But I don't know if you could call us air raid guys anymore, just because we do play with the tight end. And our last year at USC, we played in 12 personnel majority of the time. And so we do have air raid pass schemes and concepts built into the system, but the system is now, you can play in all these different personnel groupings. You can run the football. We can run outside zone, inside zone, counter schemes, bash counter schemes. And then off of all of those schemes, now you have your play action shots off of it. You have your RPOs off of it. So there's so much more than just the air raid quick game drop back scheme, which in my opinion, allows you to be really flexible to the personnel grouping that you have. Like, the system's going to be the same system as we ran at Marshall, but the quarterback I had at Marshall was, like we just talked about, more of a runner. So we went more to that direction, right, of creating an offense. All of the scheme was built around Braylon being able to run the football. Well, now with Noah behind center, it's more of like, the scheme is going to be, directed to what Noah does really, really well, and that's throwing the football. Okay. And so, but at the same time, I think people are so good at defending, and these D linemen are so athletic and freaky on the edge that you just can't drop back like the old school drop back 50 times a game like we did back in the day, or at least did back in the day, and expect your quarterback to stay upright. It's almost like, I don't know, you're just wishing at that, hoping at that point, and then hoping is bad strategy for winning football games. And so we got to be really strategic on how we can run the football. I do think we have three really good backs, and I really like my O-line coach, Coach Oglesby. I think he's really smart. I mean, obviously he knows how to run the football. He played at Wisconsin when they were really, really good. And he's really smart. And I think we've kind of created a unit up front that allows us to be flexible in what we do in a run game standpoint. So with all that being said, it allows me to be really flexible, but it will kind of lean toward Noah's strategy, or Noah's strengths, which are getting the ball out of his hands very quickly and very accurate.
Seth, you mentioned Keon Burnett. You got him back after a short departure from Arizona. He's back with the team. What does that mean for you and Noah Fifita, especially having a guy he played with back in the day? With T-Mac moving on, he still at least gets Keon Burnett back as a guy to throw to.
Yeah, I thought that was huge for us. And talking to Noah about it when we were deciding on what we wanted to do, Noah was all about it, just because obviously they've played together for so long. We felt like we needed another body in that room, and then you add a body like his, which is extremely athletic and very valuable in the pass game. Just makes us that much more dangerous. And so that allows you, like when me and Noah talk about it, it allows us to play in 11 personnel and be in 10 personnel pictures. We can be in open sets and Keon's still a threat in space. And so that's going to be huge for us. Now, obviously, he's got to go win the job. TP's made a ton of progress. Sam's doing a good job, and obviously Cam is very athletic as well. But obviously, with Key being here, Key knowing the landscape of Arizona football, Key knowing Noah, I was really excited about that get for sure, and I know Noah's pumped to have him back.
I'm sure. I can only imagine his reaction when he heard that he was coming back. I'm going to give you an opportunity that you might not want, but I want to give you a chance. Are there any guys, maybe new guys to this team, or guys who maybe have been down the depth chart at Arizona in previous seasons that have really maybe impressed you so far in through spring training, and the Wildcat fans should keep an eye on this season?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. First guy that comes to mind is KD DeCambra from our transfer from Hawaii. He played tackle. He was a walk-on at Hawaii. He ended up winning their tackle job. And when you turn on his tape against UCLA, he was locked down. And he's probably not long enough to play tackle, but he can. He can get you out of a game because he's very competitive and he's very fundamentally sound. But his care factor is so high that is the whole reason why he is who he is, why he became a walk-on at Hawaii to a potential starter at Arizona. And to me, that dude can play center, he can play guard, he can play tackle. And the greatest thing about him is he'll do it without question. He'll never question why you're doing it. He'll just whatever the team needs, whatever's best for the team. He's an unbelievable teammate. He's an unbelievable person, and we are very lucky to have him on this football team because he makes us better. And so he can do it all. So I've been extremely impressed with him through the spring. Ty Buchanan, the guy we got from Texas Tech, can play each tackle spot. He's very, very his movements are very good. I think when you watch him at Texas Tech, there was times where he was starting and he was playing really well, and there was times where maybe he wanted some times back. But late in the spring, he was probably one of our best linemen and playing at an extremely high level. So I'm really, really excited about those two guys up front. Quincy Craig from Portland State. When we brought him in, it was like, okay, he's athletic. He can do some things in like an empty package in space that maybe some other guys can't. Gives you an opportunity to throw it to the back a little bit more. But we really didn't know how physical of a runner he was going to be until the spring. And when we went live periods, that dude was arguably the most physical runner, him and Ked, throughout the spring. So I'm really excited about his growth. And then even like Marty came on late at the end. We saw the flashes that we saw at Texas State, that why he was all-purpose All-American and what he can do in space. So excited about him. And then from a receiver standpoint, Chris Hudson's been really, really good for us through the spring. So we look forward to see what he has to bring through the summer and fall. Chris Hunter does some really good things. Luke Wysong is really hard to tackle. Even though he's not very big, he's really hard to tackle. He's just a bulldog with the ball in his hand.
We saw him play against Arizona last year. He had a fantastic game.
Yeah, and so he's just a tough kid, and again a great teammate. I mean, these guys. That's probably the best thing about coming out of spring that I'm encouraged about and extremely confident about is the buy-in of the offensive unit is all in, right? We're all speaking the same language. We're all pulling the rope in the same direction. We don't have any bad teammates in that unit right now. Everybody's being a great teammate. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be here. We didn't lose anybody in the portal strictly because of that. There was nobody that really wanted to leave. And so I think we're going to have a real unit. I think we have a lot of depth. So it's gonna be fun through the summer and fall camp to kind of figure out who emerges as starters. But at the same time, in the back of your mind as a coordinator, you're like, man, I got a lot of guys that can play, right? We got 3 running backs that can really go. We got a lot of receivers that can really go, that have a lot of speed. We got a couple tight ends that can really play now. And then we got some O-linemen that can, we can move around, if we knock on wood, if we come down with any injuries. And so I feel really good about the unit. The other guy I was talking about is Braden Locke, a guy that we got from Wisconsin, the quarterback, played like 1,000 snaps, played against big-time competition like Michigan and Alabama. Probably one of the more mature quarterbacks I've ever been around. I mean, he's just as good as most team starters, right? So he's pushing Noah every day and doesn't ever complain about, really not ever taking a one rep. he's just all about the team and whatever's best for the team and whatever makes him the best version of him. So I feel really good about our unit. Obviously, we got a ton to work on, especially from an execution standpoint, just because obviously with me being new and the system being new, it's going to take more than one spring to kind of get it going. So the summer is going to be a big deal for us. And so I'm looking forward to those guys getting back and get going.
All right, I'm going to throw in one last question here, and I'll let Eric take the last couple because I know we're running a little short on time. But I always like learning about players and coaches away from the game. In the few moments, and I know you don't get much time away from the game, just as the nature of being a college coach. But when you actually do get some free time, what do you and your wife and daughter like to do when you actually have time away? And have you found anything in particular that you enjoy doing in Tucson yet?
Whatever my 6-year-old wants to do. So, like, I have a 6-year-old daughter. Her name's Layton. She's obviously the rock of mine and my wife's life. So anytime I have free time, it's whatever she wants to do. Yeah. And most of the time she has me jumping on the trampoline, or we're swimming.
Yeah. I got a 5-year-old boy, so you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. So it's not like, I guess if you want to say what have we found in Tucson that she likes to do? She likes to go to, the trampoline park. Yeah. She likes to go to, I want to say it's called Cats Indoor Play Park or something like that. We've been there a couple times. Anytime she can go to just a park to do monkey bars or whatever, she's in on it. And then obviously when she's really into gymnastics and dance. So anytime I can go watch her do that, that's what we do.
Yeah, we got a monthly pass to Elevate Trampoline Park up here because it's getting hot and we know we're going to be there at least twice a week. So I hear you.
Yeah. So
Seth, you've moved around. I mean, this is your 5th different spot in 5 years as you've grown your career. I mean, that's in a way that's tough on your family. What's unique about Tucson to you compared to where you've been starting in LA, West Lafayette, out in Huntington, West Virginia, at Ole Miss? I mean, just what do you like most about Tucson?
Yeah, so it's funny we're talking about this because I was actually talking about it with my wife the other day, and it's funny also being out on the road. I'm telling recruits this too, and it's really fun to tell because my wife and my daughter are probably the happiest I've ever seen them, and that there's a lot of reasons for that. One is as I think Tucson just fits us as a family. Growing up in, West Texas, where it's a, community feel, kind of a small town feel. I think Tucson, there's a ton to do out here. There's a lot of people, but it still has a small town community feel to it. And we really enjoy that. The people here have been great, especially to my family. The staff is probably the closest staff I've ever, had a chance to work with. And it really starts at the top with Coach Brennan, allowing our families to come up, our kids to come up and be a part of what we do. And so there's a lot of reasons. But I just think me and my wife, we really enjoy this place. And
good.
But maybe the biggest reason is because the sun's out, and so I know it does get hot here, but I'll pick the desert over any type of snow any day of the week.
I've seen snow like 5 times in my life. Yeah. Seth,
survive the next 4 months and you'll be rewarded.
You'll be rewarded.
Shorts in the winter.
That's what I've been told. Now, I will say this. During COVID at USC, I met my parents down here in Phoenix in the summer, and it was, I felt it for about 3 days. So now I got to live through it for, like he said.
I'm going to tell you this. Tucson is 5 to 10 degrees cooler than Phoenix, where Shane and I are. So you get at least a little bit of a breather compared to what we get up here. I'll just point that out. Last one for you. I know preseason polls don't mean a lot. We saw ASU was picked the bottom of the Big 12 last year. They end up winning it. The expectations for Arizona football nationally are not very high. Give us and the fan base a reason why we should come to Arizona Stadium this fall and enjoy this team.
Last year at Marshall, we were picked 5th out of 6 to finish in the East Division, and we won 10 games in the Sun Belt Championship. That's all I'm going to say. I hope they pick us last.
Love it.
And that's why we're excited to have you as the offensive coordinator at U of A. Coach, great to catch up with you. Thanks for joining Shane and me, and hope to do it again going forward.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Don't forget, Wildcat fans, if you're up in the Phoenix area, they're doing that coaches tour on Wednesday in Scottsdale at the Arizona office in Old Town Scottsdale. So I would like to be there. I'm planning on being there. Shane is planning on being there. So if you are there, stop and say hi. And let's hope that we all get some encouraging words from the coaches that I'm sure Shane and I will report on next week on the show.
You never know who's going to show up. It was. I'm sorry I missed it last year. I'll do my best to be out at the one this week. Real quick thought on the Seth Doege interview. I think it was interesting because he wasn't on the team last year, obviously, but he did mention his belief that just based on getting to know the team as he has, that this team just didn't really have an identity last year, and that's something that Barrett Baker mentioned multiple times when we had him on last year. So it's interesting that someone who wasn't on the team last year has that insight. There must be something to it. But really good stuff from Seth. Got to know him a little bit off the field as well, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to him again soon.
Oh, Shane, come on. I mean, he watched the tape. That offense had no identity. We all could see that. It was absolute garbage, and I am disappointed that Brent Brennan didn't take control midseason and wasted a weapon like Tetairoa McMillan, who it will probably be one of the greatest offensive players to ever play at Arizona.
Yeah. So your takeaway from the interview was you were even more disappointed by what we saw last year? Was that the big thing, or is that kind of how you already felt?
I just the way I kind of look at it is, the fact that somebody that was an outsider could see that they didn't have an identity. Well, it's what we thought all along, and the fact that there were no adjustments made. Okay, if you took away Dino Babers calling plays and you brought in another guy that probably called worse plays. I mean, great.
Well, and to hear it from Seth as well, it sounds like a lot of the players, even though Brent Brennan was able to convince him to stay, it sounds like maybe they had one foot out the door. Which
Do you blame them?
No. Well, as I said, you could decide whether, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You can decide whether that's a player's thing, whether that's a coach's thing. I don't know the answer to that. But I think sometimes everything clicks right away with new players, and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm hoping that that was more the issue with Brent Brennan. Just needs to get more of his guys in there, including the coaching staff. I'm trying to be glass half full about it, which is not easy for me. So don't stop me.
I'm impressed.
I mean, we're all entering this season skeptical of Brent Brennan's ability to be a power conference head coach, and rightfully so. And I think that he's fine with that. And I think that Arizona going into the season, like Seth mentioned, kind of loving the fact that they're rated as low as they are, and overcoming expectations at Marshall and hoping to do the same thing here. I think that's a good thing. So, trying to stay positive. I think 6 wins is probably the ceiling for this team, but we'll have to wait and see.
Talk a little college football. There's a rumor that was going around last week that the NCAA is looking to expand from 12 teams to 16. That would be 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 group of 6, and 3 at large. Is this a good thing, Shane, or is it a kind of a nightmare?
Well, somewhere in between. I don't like it for 2 reasons. First, I think the CFP has been expanded too far as it is. I would have kept it to six teams or maybe 8. Beyond that, the idea of providing certain conferences with more automatic bids than other conferences doesn't make any sense to me. If the SEC and Big Ten are superior, they're going to get more teams in anyway. The logic that those conferences need more bids or should receive more bids simply because they're better just completely falls flat when you think about it for more than 2 seconds. It doesn't make any sense. Now, if you're going to expand to 14 or 16 teams, and probably at least one of the other is going to happen, I'd keep the automatic bids as they are, except I would see the teams based on merit rather than conference championships.
I agree with that.
So you win your conference championship, sure, you're in. You should. I mean, otherwise, why have a conference championship? But you're seated based on where you should be. And by the way, I do the same. I would love to see the NFL do the same thing, which they're never going to do. I don't want to see an 8-win team get a home game against a 12-win team. But so I apply that logic to college as well. And then you fill up the rest of the seats based on what the committee believes, because I hate, on one hand, I hate having a committee decide these things, a group of flawed human beings decide it, but there's just no perfect apples to apples way to do it in college football. Same as college basketball. In college basketball, you don't have a number of automatic bids for each conference. You have one, and then you work your way back from there. And I think it should be the same way in college football. I think that part of it is absolutely ridiculous.
All right, so here's a thought on this one that I want to run by you. One of the arguments that I would have had is I think that the top team should get a bye. However, we saw this year that the 4 teams who had a bye in the first round all lost their next game.
Mm-hmm. And you predicted it, to your credit. You were right.
I did. So in a way, this would kind of neutralize that, because maybe teams are saying having a bye necessarily isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so, normally I would have said this is a terrible idea. But the fact that, the team that won the national championship played 4 playoff games, everybody in this system would play 4 playoff games.
Yeah.
I can't really argue. The problem that I have, and I listen, I love college football and it's great, but you're looking at some teams that are going to play 17 games, which I guess they're being paid, so I guess you can get away with it. But it just seems, and listen, it's more college football, so I guess what am I to argue? It just seems weird that college football is trying to play as many games as the NFL, basically, for the top teams.
I guess on the one hand, it's a way to get these athletes ready to play in the NFL, those who are going to make the next step. But on the other hand, you compare it with college basketball. College basketball, they play about 35 or so games a year, depending on how far you make it in whatever tournament you're in.
Right.
And then the NBA, you play more than twice that much. I mean,
right.
Even with load management, you're playing probably about twice that much. In football, it's different. But then, I mean, it's just a different kind of sport. You don't play as many games because it's more physically taxing. So I don't know if I have a bigger problem with that so much as the allocating a number of bids to each conference. But I do concede your point. It's interesting. It's kind of like in Major League Baseball. Wasn't not necessarily the case last year, but in years previous, a lot of the top teams who got the bye, like the Dodgers did, not last year, but the year before last, and a couple other teams, they got swept out of the playoffs. And of course, some people are blaming it on, well, they had to sit for a week or so. They lost all that momentum. And so maybe you could make the same argument with college football. But I think that had more to do with some of the teams that were in the top 4 that probably shouldn't have been based on, they did it based on them winning the conference championships, but they didn't do it based on just overall like how good they were. The committee had to seed certain teams 1 through 4, and I would scrap that system entirely.
I agree. That didn't make sense having ASU get a bye when they were not, and I'm sure ASU fans now would look at it and be like, yeah, we could have gone and beaten Penn State, who was, well, I guess, I mean, I don't know.
Well, ASU and Boise State. I mean, but neither of them. I mean,
neither of them. Right.
They both won their conferences. Congrats. You belong in the CFP, but they shouldn't have been seated where they were.
Stupid rule. I also want to talk about basketball. There's a committee that is having positive conversations about moving from halves to quarters like the NBA and women's basketball. Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I feel like this move is inevitable. It's been talked about for a long time. I don't really have strong feelings about it one way or the other. Unlike the previous topic, the biggest difference in the game will presumably be the elimination of the 1-on-1. So they'd likely go to either non-shooting or 2-shot fouls for each foul. Like once you get to 5 team fouls in the quarter, I believe that's how the women have it set up. So you lose that aspect. And I could really take or leave that. I don't think the 1-on-1 is really necessary. But yeah, I don't think it's a move that has to be made, but I also don't really have a good reason to keep things how they are, except that's just how it always has been. So yeah, I'm fine with 4 10-minute quarters, but I'm not passionate about it. If it happens, it happens.
Yeah, I don't hate it. But I think, listen, if women's basketball does it and the NBA does it, I don't think there's any problem with it. The other thing I don't like about the one thing I don't like about college basketball, timeouts, the 16, 12, 8, and 4-minute marks. It just kind of takes away some of the flow to the game.
Yeah.
And we're just doing that because of commercials, right? So now when you would be able to stop it, hypothetically, you go stop it at the 5 minute mark of each quarter, and then, in between quarters, you could have a longer break than maybe, eh, make up for those extra commercial. I don't know, just like in a way, I would think it would shorten the game a little bit. No, I don't know if I'm crazy with
Well,
that, but
I'm sure they'll still get their commercial breaks in regardless, So but yeah, it might change strategy a little bit because a lot of coaches talk about winning, the first 4 minutes and the next 4 minutes, and of course the TV timeouts aren't exact. It just depends on when there's an out of bounds call. Um, but that might change the dynamic a little bit. But yeah, I don't. It's like if you want to go ahead. I don't really care, but it will change the night. It will also change the dynamic a little bit in terms of if you're in a one-on-one situation, do you maybe bench a guy who's not good at free throw shooting because he's more likely to miss the front end? So a little bit of strategy change, but probably not that much.
I would change it immediately. I don't even see why. Why do we need to have a
Fine,
committee? It's just common sense.
fine, go ahead. I'm good with it.
Uh, I would also implement schools that you can't transfer to. That's
I know
just
you would. I know you would.
if I well, we've talked about that earlier. Listen, if I was a college commissioner, there'd be an overhaul day one. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are and if you agree or disagree with me, that will never happen. So you have nothing to worry
And,
about.
and I'm glad you're not in charge of Arizona's basketball schedules either. So, by the way, I got some Shane standouts if you want to mention those at
Oh
the
yeah,
very
yeah.
end
Sorry,
here.
we missed the.
No worries.
I was so looking forward
I
to
thought
the.
you were segueing to college football since we just talked to Seth Doege, so no worries. But I'll get
Okay.
these in real quick.
Yeah, please.
Because I especially want to shout out Colton Smith one last time. He won his singles match in Virginia in the Sweet 16 in straight sets, including a second set tiebreak. So he ended his college career on a high note. I mean, the sky is the limit for that guy, and the way he
Yeah.
carries himself and his background. If he has some success at the pro level, he's such a marketable guy and he can score some big endorsements along with winning tournaments. So, thank you, Colton, for being an outstanding Arizona Wildcat. I'm sorry Arizona's run ended in the Sweet 16 again, but if you haven't listened to his our chat with him on our previous episode, please be sure to do that because he's an awesome guy and it's a great chat. I want to mention Zach Eckstein, who is the Big 12 Men's Outdoor Track and Field Athlete of the Week. He won the men's 110-meter hurdles event at the Desert Heat Classic last weekend. He had a school record time of 13.17. That's a time that it ranks first in the Big 12, second in the NCAA, and ninth in the world. So,
Wow.
congrats to Zach. Big performance. And finally, I want to mention Aaron Gordon. I'm not a Nuggets fan, but I am a big Aaron Gordon fan. And he hit the game winner against the Thunder in game one of that series in OKC. You might remember his brother passed away last year, and since then, I guess I just learned he's helped take care of his nephews. He moved the youngest two out to Denver to be with him. So all around good guy. Very happy for him and his success. And T.J. McConnell as well, who's having a heck of a game as Indiana's just about to wrap up a beating of Cleveland here in Game 4. He's got looking real quick, 13 points, 8 assists in 18 minutes. Just another day at the office for TJ. Unfortunately, Ben Matherin got ejected after playing 1 minute.
1 minute. Yep.
But congrats to all the Arizona Wildcats who are having success, especially Aaron Gordon and, of course, TJ. They deserve it very much.
Yeah, I just one thing I want to touch on. I'm just kind of bummed about the tennis team. I really thought with a
Yeah.
superstar like Colton Smith and Jay Friend, I really thought they were going to make a run this year, and just to see them go down in the Sweet 16 was a little disappointing to me.
I don't know if you kept track of it, but they were so it's basically best 4 out of 7. You have a doubles point, and then you have 6 singles matches. They lost the doubles points, so they had to win 4 of the 6 singles matches. They won a couple, including Colton Smith, and then Jay Friend. It's a best of 3 sets in each match. For those who don't know, he had a 5-2 lead in the final set, and he was 2 points away from winning the match, and he lost like 7-5.
How is
So
that possible?
So that was that. So if they win that match and it comes down, I think it was Casper Christensen was in a 3-set match with whatever Virginia player. So they would have still had to overcome that one as well. But yeah, it's really the second year in a row that they became that close to overcoming and getting the Elite Eight, and it's unfortunate. But of course, we're look at it this way: we're getting passionate and worked up about men's tennis, and that's not something we would have said a couple of years ago. Hopefully Clancy Shields can continue to reload, and hopefully Arizona can keep him because he's one of the best coaches on campus right now.
See, and that's kind of what I was thinking, Shane. I don't mean to be pessimistic here, but I really
That's my
wonder
job.
if of course, I wonder if now that you don't have Colton Smith back, I wonder if this is Clancy Shields' opportunity to jump. Don't be surprised. I don't have any inside info.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me if it's time. Based on our conversation with him last year, I think he believes in kind of starting anew every few years. I wouldn't shock me if he makes a jump from Arizona.
If you're listening, Clancy, put Eric in his place and tell him you're a Wildcat for life.
Yes, please do. Great show. Thanks to Seth Doege for joining Shane and me earlier in the show. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.